example, for which track. Indeed, different research types probably will be relevant for certain tracks, but we do not, let's say, want to lose you because you think, oh, I'm in track 1, so everything else doesn't count for me. Understanding different types of research, how they contribute, let's say, to the big picture is also important for you to be able to read literature well, because if you understand, what's behind this particular article, then you really can judge better how it helps in your own research. So what type of knowledge is there, what type of knowledge is offered, why certain methods are used. So having information about different research types is definitely beneficial for you regardless of which track you're in. And question where you can find which track you are in, I do assume that bachelor project is already kind of running and you know which track you're in. And I think, so basically seen online is a good answer, because that's otherwise a difficult question for us to answer, I think. Anyway, so let's move to the last part of today. And again, as I said, we are going to deep dive into different types of research. On Canvas, I put a small template for your own bachelor theme kind of work. If you go there for a minute, you can take this template, and while we're talking about different types of research, you can also reflect on your bachelor theme and start thinking about, what type of research this may be, and, try to answer the questions that are in the template. I know that different tracks have different, let's say, approaches or level of detail in defining the themes. And I think such exercise for some tracks and themes will be easier than for others. So as an alternative for those who think, oh, I cannot do it yet based on my theme, there is also a suggested example theme from last year, the real theme that I took from last year. So if you can't do it, let's say, on your own theme, you can also try to apply it to the theme described the exercise. Because again, our idea today is really to try to connect what we are talking about in terms of research to what you're going to be doing in the next month in your own bachelor project. So let's start with this from exploratory research, because again, we are moving really from let's say the starting point to the, let's say, most advanced in terms of what knowledge you need there to generate certain type of knowledge as a result. So exploratory research can deal with problems that are very new or not well defined. And throughout the examples that I'm going to walk you through, I will use the same topic that is close to my heart and Eric's heart, because again, we work within supply chain and particularly within procurement. So I'm going to use example within the procurement field, but you can, again, easily, I think, relate a new problem, not well-defined problem to any other one relevant for you. So
Anna,
some years, yes.
Anna, just a quick question, because I can't solve this. Some people say they can't find the template. Now, I don't want to interrupt your presentation. Shall I have a look
if you go to Canvas to module 1, it should be under the lecture. Just double check that it's published. It should be published. All right. So again, a problem that was, I think, very relevant 3-4 years ago, maybe 5, there was, okay, we need to digitalize procurement. We need to use more technologies, Industry 4.0. So let's do something about this. But it was not clear at that point of time for many organizations what is needed, or how to approach this big issue. So again, imagine the problem is new. Then the knowledge question that you can generate, again, thinking the problem is new, the question should be exploratory. What's the impact that digitization can have on the processes in the procurement, or what are the benefits and risks? We're just really trying to find out how something works. And then, of course, when you deal with very new topic, you typically do not expect to find lots of academic literature, because academic literature tends to have certain, let's say, time gap to catch up with the new problems, because the time often needed to publish academic research is substantial due to, let's say, quality filters and time needed to get through the data collection, analysis, and publication process. So by default, if your topic is new or relatively new, you need to be prepared that I will not find a lot of information that's academic right spot on. So I can find some relevant theories. I can find maybe information about some sort of the same problems to look into. And probably there will be already something about exploration of practice, so management literature. Again, maybe not in the industry I want to look at, maybe in some other sectors, but new topics, typically more managerial literature, less academic literature, that's what you need to be prepared for. Research design. Well, first of all, because we are really about to think about something very new, of course, we are dealing with inductive logic most likely. Yeah, we're trying to describe, classify something very new. Maybe it's abductive logic if the topic is not completely new, but it's, let's say, a spin-off of something that's already exists there. And typically when you're really exploring something, you can either use case study, you can use secondary analysis. So you try to really apply what's already there, maybe written about other sectors or other similar problems. You do interviews, you can do focus groups with experts or with just, practitioners that for them topic is relevant. You can even do a survey, or you can combine these methods, yeah? But typically this is something that you are working with that helps you to explore and get rich data about how something works and functions. It's likely that you will be working a lot with qualitative data. Quantitative also possible, depending again on the nature of the problem and the topic. And if you want survey, it often, let's say, gets quantified for the analysis reasons. But expect that for exploration, a lot of qualitative data is present. Analysis naturally flows and follows the type of data that you collected. So again, if it's qualitative, then you'll be talking about reduction of data into themes, categories, etc. Quant is also possible if you have numbers to work with. What is the outcome? Well, first of all, if my question is, what's the impact of digitization on the processes or what are risks and benefits, it will really be a description of what it means to me if I make my procurement digital. Yeah, what will be the benefits, what will be the risk or obstacles, how the process will look like, how it can be implemented, yeah, depending on what you want to study. But it's really a descriptive knowledge, exploratory knowledge that you are generating. And when you talk about recommendations for management, exploratory knowledge cannot give a very strong advice, yeah, because you are very far still from proving how something works. Yeah, you're just exploring how something works. But they, of course, can help still the managers to understand the problem better, to structure it better, and to really see what's the next step in developing the solution to it, for example. Yeah. So if you noticed, what I've done by talking through research now is I followed every step of the research cycle. Yeah, it's not a cycle anymore. There's no circle, but I really followed every step of research cycle to explain you how a certain type of research looks like. Yeah, and this type of research generates exploratory descriptive knowledge. Again, you are just finding out how something new works. Yeah, so this is something that is really the first, let's say, phase of exploring every new topic that from time to time appears there. I must say that I think nowadays in management research, claiming a very big level of novelty is extremely difficult. There is so much knowledge on almost everything that claiming something completely unexplored is a really big challenge. Yeah, and I can really think of just handful phenomena in the recent years that qualify for this. Yeah, I don't know. Blockchain at some point of time is an example of such a really new phenomena that could not be related to something else. Yeah, but overall, really rare. And again, the let's say the purpose of this research is not to develop theory yet, yeah, to bring new systematic theoretically proven knowledge yet. And this is why I think also in your bachelor project is typically not type of research that is expected, yeah, in most of the topic. I had a quick look at the themes of this year. I saw a potential for it maybe in one or two, but I do think that there is more, let's say, a room to move to theory building research in every of these teams. Yeah, so we are not going to be extensively talking about exploratory research in the next lectures, because again, we do think that it's not the most relevant for you. But you need to understand it because again, this is the first phase of generating knowledge on a new topic. Now, theory building research, the next type. So let's say the problem is still relatively new, but it's somehow clear because you are past this exploration description phase. You kind of know what are potentially, let's say, obstacles, benefits, what are the things that digital procurement can bring. So now we are at the phase where you see that many companies are adopting it, using it, but it's still not clear how it can be used for one of the key processes in procurement, which is a relationship with suppliers. Yeah, how can you really manage suppliers better using digital technologies? Yeah, so I really want to now look into depth into this topic, and I can generate a question that is really more of a theory building nature. Yeah, how can supply relationship management be enhanced with introduction of digital technology? So I'm trying to kind of build here knowledge and links between technologies being independent variable and SRM being dependent one. Yes, and I'm trying to really see how the links here work. So yeah, I'm trying to develop new knowledge that answers how question, and that's what theory building typically does. You still probably have not too much to read from academic literature, simply again because I explained that there is typically time lag that exists in the academic field in catching up with new topic. But you could probably look into some empirical context already that maybe are about industries that are pioneers in these digital technologies, and you could find something relevant. You definitely should be able to understand the most important concepts or variables from literature. You can probably have a range of theories that will help you to work with this topic, and you do expect to have business literature quite rich on this topic already, because business literature tends to develop faster than academic, and it should already be there to help you in your own research. Research design, again, we are probably still talking about maybe potentially abductive logic for not very new topics, or inductive logic differently, because again, our idea is still to observe something and generalize from our observations. Yeah, so if all observed swans are white, all swans are white. Yeah, if I do see certain relationship between technologies and managing suppliers in organizations that I study, I would assume that it's always true like that. Again, very likely to have case studies, deep dives into organizations itself, maybe secondary data analysis, maybe interviews of focus groups, or a combination of those. So the methods do not substantially change compared to exploratory studies, yeah, because we're still within this inductive world, yeah, generating new knowledge world. If you noticed, I did not mention here or before such strategies that you may recall from research projects such as, for example, ethnography, simply because nobody is expecting you to do ethnography, which is a very, I think, let's say, deep dive into any social context study. Yeah, business schools and time frames of bachelor project do not allow for this very deep qualitative investigation. So that's why I intentionally put them really out of the picture. Yeah, but interviews, case studies, focus groups, combination of those, definitely very possible. Again, same types of data, qualitative data to increase the richness of the knowledge on the topic, but quant is also possible, yeah, especially if we're talking about theory refinement situations. Analysis, again, depends on data type, so both qualitative and quantitative is possible. Research outcomes. So if you build theory, the outcome of your research is really propositions about how something works. In our case, if we're talking about digital procurement technologies, it's really about how digital technologies are related to various aspects of managing suppliers. Yeah. You cannot generalize to all possible organization types if you do qualitative research. If you do research in, for example, food industry, it may not relate to car manufacturers. If you do research in small organizations, it may not be always relevant for very big ones. Yeah, so there are limitations to how far this knowledge, let's say, applies. And when you talk about recommendations to management, again, we are not yet able to provide strong advice because you have just assumptions. propositions that you develop in theory are yet to be tested in the next steps, yeah? But sometimes it's really used as an attempt to explain how something works. And recommendations, again, they are contextual, yeah? So if you do research in one type of industry, it's probably more logical to assume that recommendations will hold within this industry, but you would be more critical to thinking that, you know, they apply anywhere else, yeah? So it's very contextual and it's not yet tested, yeah, in terms of how strong the knowledge helps managers to, let's say, to tackle certain problems. And typically the knowledge that you are looking for when you're working with theory building research is predictive knowledge, yeah? Because it's about really how something we think will work. What are the links and how some things will function. You can also say it deals with explanatory knowledge because theories also explain how things work. But in a way, it's also about predicting. If I see that something works like this in this organization that I studied, I kind of assume that it also will work in the other organizations, given the context, in the same way. Yeah? And theory building research, again, is already something that we expect some bachelor project themes to be engaged with. Yeah? And again, it's really important for you, if you look at academic papers, when you read them, that you really see what's behind there. What are they doing? Are they exploring something? Are they building theory? Or are they doing something that we will discuss in a bit? I'll give you now an example. With actual last year BP theme. And I intentionally chose themes from last year because I don't want to put in, let's say, advantage those students who happen to be within the theme I'm using as an example compared to the rest. So one of the themes that was given to the students was about implementing aspects of self-organization in different companies. Yeah, so basically it means that you do not impose the decision-making structures on employees. Employees really do their own decision-making. Yeah, authority is decentralized. And then the question that students were supposed to study, then how does human resource management work in such organizations? Yeah, can you apply traditional processes to such organizations, or are they really not relevant anymore because employees basically manage how they work themselves, also including, you know, remuneration or development and things like that. So what students were expected to do, it was clearly said, okay, qualitative methods apply, yeah? And this is clear because the topic is quite new, yeah? We don't yet have much knowledge of these organizations because it's still kind of in quite early phase how these things work in business, yeah? And some questions were offered, yeah. So how can organizations create pay structures, or how you can review performance in such organizations, yeah. So something that really kind of is around this traditional HR processes that really being challenged, yeah. Trying to understand how they can work in such organizations. And then type of research that was behind there, given the novelty of the topic, it was possible to do actually exploratory study, but it's also possible to build theory, yeah? And that would be, I think, a much more valuable study if the research output would be assumptions about how certain processes in HR field can work in these organizations, yeah? And that would be, I think, a better, let's say, research output to aim for, yeah? Because again, versus just exploring, trying to develop propositions about certain topics. And logic of such study is naturally inductive, again, because topic is very novel and you are really trying to generalize based on limited observations that you will find in empirical world about this self-managing organizations. Yeah? Is this clear? Do we need to stop more on these two types of research? How does the chat look like? Yeah? Okay. All right.
Looks clear so far.
Okay, then let's try to move on. Theory testing research. This is something that, yeah, if you know the word hypothesis, and I think most of you have worked with testing hypotheses before, that's probably a bit more your comfort zone. Yeah, but again, it's really important, I think, in bachelor project to understand that we are moving a bit beyond the boundaries of hypothesis testing. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just, again, there is more in science than hypothesis testing. Again, working with the same problem that we have described, let's say, so we are now at the stage that we know quite a lot about how digital works for industries, for companies, for procurement, but we still have a problem of, let's say, productivity of buyers, yeah, because overall efficiency of purchasing, yeah. Question is, do we need really to improve automation in the processes? Yeah, so we're looking for the knowledge that will help us to decide, am I investing in technologies to automate purchasing, or do I need to do something else and maybe educate my buyers better? Yeah, so we need to have knowledge that will help us really prove relationships between efficiency and digital technologies organizations. So let's see what can be really done here in terms of knowledge. Yeah, in such situation where you are already, let's say, in the phase where exploration is over, certain theory is built, you now need to test, yeah, if it's really true what you have assumed before. So let's say that we formulate hypothesis, yeah, digital technologies and purchase order processing will enhance productivity of buyers. And if we find proof to that it may be, let's say, basis for the companies to make a decision to invest in such technologies, yeah. And if you don't find really correlation between these two, then maybe not. So you can expect that you do have substantial knowledge by that phase accumulated, yeah. So theory is formulated, maybe some aspects have been tested, but you still do not have the test of this particular process or question, yeah. And that's why there is a reason to engage in theory testing study. Definitely deductive logic, because we are trying really to move now into opposite direction, yeah. So finding that, if something is true, it will be also true for every organization. And when we are talking about theory testing, we definitely focus on surveys and experiments as two main strategies, maybe also secondary analysis, but yeah, I think these are two that come often first in your mind, yeah. In this particular topic, again, maybe not enough secondary data, but maybe possible for other topics. Quant data by default. And then also we need to think about sorry guys, lots of talking. And also probably statistical analysis to analyze the data. Eric, can you take over for a second?
Yes, no problem. Yeah, so we are quantitatively testing hypotheses. So we want to test the relationship between two variables, and statistics is being used to reject or not reject that hypothesis. And that's why quant data is the typical type of data that you would use here. And like we saw that in the beginning with the exploratory descriptive, we could not make very strong recommendations. We were just describing. We moved into theory building, where it already became a bit more convincing. But here you're really showing with quantitative data whether or not a certain relationship is true. So the type of recommendation that you can give here is much more convincing to managers. You still have to, of course, think about context, because if you only collect the data via, for instance, a survey, but only from the Netherlands, you still have to critically think about, okay, can I now generalize also to the US or to South Africa or to China? But we are in larger data sets and more convincing types of findings.
Yep. And this is example of the BP theme again from the last year, as I dealt with theory testing approach, yeah, that I'm going to show to you now. So the problem was a different one. Again, I think very real now, about may a robot steal your job? Yeah. So let's say inferences about how job automation will affect the choices of future jobs or really the job market. Yeah. And this is something that already, I think, quite a lot of research exists on automation and how it affects the jobs in certain industries, in certain aspects. For example, a lot of research is already there in how automation affects jobs in the warehouses. The idea is that we have particular hypothesis to test. Yeah, so how basically the perceived likelihood of job automation will affect job choice. Yeah, so will the students if you know that the jobs in this sector or area will be automated very likely next 5 years, will I even opt for such job choice? The ways to address this topic, if you define relationship as is basically causal, so do you want to prove if definitely how I perceive the job will affect my job choice, then the best way, of course, to do an experiment, because this is really the only way to establish causality. But if you change a bit your, let's say, research focus, and instead of really kind of proving this link, you want to focus instead on how certain characteristics or process of automation processes can affect the job choice. So you want to find correlation between certain types of this automation. You can also do a survey as a suitable strategy. And very often, overall, what happens is that because experiments are more complex to run and they're more time taking to run sometimes, well, most often, I think, than surveys, relationships that are natural causal are actually tested through surveys. Not the most optimal choice, but a workaround that you can always see even in published papers, But overall, causality is also is only about experiments. We'll talk about this in week 4. But the choice has really been driven by your research question, and nothing else really should be the decision factor here. Anyway, will you do experiment? Will you do survey? It doesn't matter. You definitely will apply deductive knowledge in such case. So again, this is an example of topic that is hypothesis testing, which again, I think probably for most of you is the comfort zone compared, let's say, to other topics. Moving on to the decision science research, again, the newly introduced type of research, which I really invite you also to spend some time after to get a feeling, do I understand it properly? If we talk about, okay, so how can a problem look like from the perspective of decision science research? So let's say that we have a well-studied topic in general, but there is a particular management problem for a particular company, So we know that IT technologies, automation, digital really works well. It's adopted, it's implemented, but there is a specific problem. There is a lot of increase in raw material prices, and we cannot develop our purchasing budgets adequately anymore. And if you look, for example, recently that some markets are very strange, that I think this is a relevant project and problem for many industries and situations in raw materials. So let's see what we can do using decision science. So potential question or example, of course, of it. So we need to see how can we improve our forecasting for raw material prices, so that our budgeting becomes more adequate and we know what we actually have to budget for purchasing for certain raw materials. Again, very company specific, very contextual problem that is addressed by decision science. Literature that you probably need some information about cost modeling, and this is something that does not have to be very specific to raw material industry. So you just need the general knowledge on cost modeling. You need maybe some information, of course, on forecasting techniques. You need information on price dynamics for raw materials. So things like that, again, numbers. So quantification is really at heart of decision science. Inductive logic, and this may be something that is counterintuitive to you, but again, decision science is very contextual. We start from something really specific for the company, and then we may try to go more, let's say, general to where it applies beyond the boundaries of a certain organization that we are trying to find solution for. So again, logic is inductive. Strategies, again, are very specific to this approach. It's typically going to be developing of mathematical models, cost models, forecasting models for optimization of this particular budgeting process. Quant data, again, market data, historical purchasing data, simulation data, because you want probably different scenarios, how things will work, assuming different price levels and different dynamics and developments in the market. Data that you will have both empirical and simulation, you can really to train, improve, test the models. We will talk a bit more in decision science approach in week 4. You will understand a bit more what we mean by this, but again, it's a specific type of science and data is also used in a specific way. You want to be sure that data I'm using, I'm feeding my models, makes my models better, so the output is really true to life and creates as possibly optimal solution as they can become. Outcomes of research, you basically give the company the tools for raw material forecasting, that can generate adequate pricing scenarios and adequate estimates of budget that are needed to buy certain materials. That's a very specific outcome and output. Recommendations. Well, we're not really kind of talking about maybe traditional scientific recommendations here. We're giving sometimes tools and decisions to organizations when we use decision science. And they are really very contextual because, again, typically such solutions can be created for a particular organization, maybe for industry, but then the level, I think, is already not as, let's say, usable for every organization as possible. So they're very relevant for companies that you are developing solution for. But for other contexts, you need really to think how this applies, because every organization will have a different, maybe parameters, constraints, or design requirements into such processes. So again, very contextual, very specific, and this is definitely a prescriptive knowledge. If you do certain things, this is the output that you should have at the end. So that's the logic of decision science. I'll give you an example of this type of bachelor theme again. So this was a topic about how to improve the work in the warehouses. So basically the idea was that on one hand you have people working in warehouses, on the other hand you have trucks that come for the loads of goods that they need to take further in the distribution process. And the problem was that there is no basically harmony and optimization between these two processes, which either leads to most of the time the trucks have to wait for a lot of time until the load is full, for example, or there's a problem with the warehouse space that you cannot really use it or maximize the use of it if the processes are not in harmony. So really to kind of harmonize truck departure schedules and the warehouse pickers' work, you need to do something about this. And this is a particularly specific type of problem. So the goal is to forecast the workload of order pickers, to schedule them in such a way that the truck departure dock doors are optimized. So you get data from a real warehouse, from a real data set, from a real company, and then you basically get to work on optimizing this problem. So it's a clear decision science problem because your output is optimization of the schedule. And you're going to work using mathematical models, very likely adding simulated data to the data set that is provided from the real supermarket chain. And again, inductive logic is really something that you're going to use because we are moving from a very contextual, very particular to potentially more general. Any questions on that, or we're good to move forward? I think some discussion
I can keep up with the chat. So okay,
very good. So this was the last and the fourth example of the research type that we're going to talk about based on what is relevant for you and your bachelor project themes during this course. From exploratory to theory building to theory testing and to a decision science. So these are 4 types that are there. And by the way, what we are going to have in the next weeks, we're going to have several academic papers that correspond to these types of research, except exploratory, that we are going to dissect, let's say, in the next weeks, looking at the literature review, at their methods, at their conclusion, everything that you can think of, so that will give you also a better example of not only how your bachelor theme works, but how also really published academic papers work with these types of logic and research cycle and everything. So we'll keep coming back to this every time, focusing on different aspects depending on lecture topic. So basically this is probably a lot to digest, and I think today is really the most maybe difficult lecture to digest because this is really something that we are trying to lay as foundation for the rest of the weeks. But I would like you to think now a bit and test how you understand these different research objectives and types of research. I'm not going to use Mentimeter anymore. I'm just going to ask you to put some answers in the chat. So I will give you examples of 4 descriptions of research objectives, one by one. And you could try to identify the type of research that is relevant for that. And we can also, for example, think about scientific reasoning if this is relevant, because I see a question coming in the chat. So, first example, yeah? One area that remains underexplored in literature is resource-based view of alliances. You don't have to understand what is this. It's basically explanation of why alliances exist. Even though alliances are rapidly increasing and developing. So the purpose here is to develop a more encompassing resource-based explanation of strategic alliances than is currently available in the literature. And this is typically how science formulates the research objective of questions. Yeah, sometimes complex words, but this is an extract from real article. Yeah. So the purpose to develop a more encompassing resource-based explanation of alliances. So theory building, because I think there's also kind of a giveaway here is the word develop. And you really see that they are bringing a particular theoretical lens of explanation of alliances, definitely theory building. Yeah, so that's easy. And of course, the logic here will be most likely inductive. Yeah. Next one. Yeah, about existing classifications of business services. Yeah, so existing ones take perspective of supplier. We want in this paper to find a classification or propose one based on the buyer view. Yeah, so how the buyers can classify services depending on their own processes. Yeah, so the purpose is to develop a new classification. Exploratory. Any other? Yeah. Only one answer. +1. Yep. Exploratory. Yep. Yes, indeed, it is exploratory because your idea is simply to propose a new classification. Yeah, you are not putting yourself challenging, let's say, task to develop any theory further. Yeah. Next one. Oh, sorry. This one. I think that's also pretty easy one. Yeah. So we want to find some model for the timetable rescheduling problem. Yeah, to deal with real life scale, like large scale disruptions of the railway network. Yeah, so what do you think type of research that you would apply here? That's pretty easy one, I think. Yeah, decision science, of course. Yeah, because again, a very specific problem, linear programming. So, okay, mathematical model, rescheduling problem. Yeah, so it means that you want to improve and optimize the schedule. Yeah. And yes, answers will be on Canvas, Tobias. Yes, of course. We not put all answers in your preliminary slides because then there is nothing to work with. But of course, we'll give you all answers on Canvas. And then last one, yeah, so that's the longest one. So basically the idea is that we study complex contracts, and the idea is that there have been studies on how different clauses or parts of text in the contracts depend on the history of parties working together, yeah? And the authors here want to analyze conditions under which the learning effect, so like change in these clauses, is likely to be stronger or weaker, yeah? So they want to predict differences in how the prior interactions between the contract parties affect the change of the contract language, theory testing. And do you say this because it's kind of the only one left, or you really understand that this is theory testing? That's, oh, theory building, okay. Testing. It's indeed testing, and it's not a it could look like a theory building, but when I see here that, authors want to find conditions when effect is stronger and weaker, it makes me think that they want to quantify relationships. Yeah, so they want to find a quant link between them. And this to me points to theory testing. Exactly. Stronger or weaker gives it away, I think. Exactly, that it is. Yeah, so that really points out that we are dealing with trying to find strong proof of this effects. Yeah, very good. I think you get it, and I'm happy about that because that was a lot of information to really digest. Now, what I want to come back to, and I don't know if you had really time, because it was a lot to talk through, to look in your bachelor project theme and follow this this little template. And again, this is something that at most we could define today, because there will be much more to talk in the next weeks about your research, of course. But you know, if anybody wants to share an example, or you find that you know something that you cannot do yet, and again, I know that in some tracks the themes are formulated at a bit higher level. That's why I gave you an example theme, and I do suggest that, you know, for those of you who are not quite yet there in terms of theme definition, you try to work with existing example. But yeah, so if you want, we can stop for a couple of minutes here. In particular, I think maybe if you feel you struggle with certain things, is anyone who wants to ask a question about somewhere where you stuck with? You can also do it in the Q&A session next week. It's also okay if you bring, you know, it, and we can discuss a bit. Yeah. Yeah. All right, then let's do this again. Your template you have. Last two things that I want to summarize, because we are well on time to finish lecture quarter to one as predicted. So what have we looked into today? Yeah, and that's what we will try to wrap up our lectures with every week. So we looked into three big learning objectives that we will keep working on next weeks. And what we will do is we will every time offer you, let's say, a list of questions that you can look at. And if you say, I really understand, I can answer them in a good way, it means you are learning what we expect you to be learning. Yeah. So we talked about the relationship between management and research. So if you can, after thinking about today's lecture, coming back to materials, answer these two questions, it means you are getting to the level of knowledge that we would like you to get. If you can understand research cycle in terms of remembering the logical flow of the steps and what's happening in each of them, then you're also learning what we expect you to learn. Yeah. And if you understand how to find a project, how to match, let's say, a project with a theory and a suitable research approach there, this is the number of questions that you also can ask you. Yeah. So do I understand from the readings what is theory? Yes. What is theory testing? What is theory building? Also, do I remember types of data I can use? Do I understand what research types are suitable for different problems? And am I getting a bit there in terms of the, let's say, the topic that I am given to work with? Yeah. Again, every week we'll try to post such questions. And these are also kind of questions that you need to think about. If I know this, I'm getting also ready for the exam. Yeah, we'll talk about the exam later, but this is basically what keeps your learning on track. Yeah, so that's basically what we will have for today. Last thing is plan for week 2. So plan for week 2 is really deep dive into literature review, which will connect to your first assignment in bachelor project. We will also do an interactive demonstration of how you can build a plan or a map of literature review, and we also will show you very extensively how you can search for literature in databases. Yeah, so the problems of syntaxes, the how to save searches, etc., etc. Yeah, so we will focus on this next week. Yeah, it will be much more, I think, focused topic compared to this week, because again, it will be just deep dive into literature. So please prepare the readings. There is one textbook reading that will really give you kind of say foundations for how to approach this process.